Really knew what you were looking for, and very haltingly, the love theme to the Titanic, and I was so proud of myself. On that last day I had lessons with her, I had to excuse myself for a very important phone call, and while I was away from the piano, I heard her playing in a very connected way the love theme to the Titanic, and I thought, wow, I wish she would stop doing that. I know I'm supposed to play it faster. When I got back to the room, I could not believe my eyes. It wasn't her that was playing, it was my 5-year-old son, Tony. Tony is now a classical musician, and he's also extremely intelligent with sciences and math. So those intelligences kind of go together. Well, long story short, the piano teacher looks at me, and I looked at her, and she says, I don't mean to be disrespectful in any way, but how about if I spend the rest of my 6 months with the young man here? And I said, go for it. Yeah. So Tony had natural musical intelligence. So I tried to get my adult learners to see their natural intelligences and to use them in the classroom. So for example, if one of my students had musical intelligence, I may have them develop a project where they're using music, they're integrating music into it, and then they're going to get into their long-term memories faster. So those are some of the things that we put into this learning environment. All in all, the brain-compatible learning environment is very dynamic, flexible, concept-related as opposed to teaching content, very brain-stimulating, brain energizing. Another idea that we put into the BC3 is to keep the class moving, keep it very dynamic. Teachers should not be teaching any more than 20 minutes at a time the concepts that they're trying to help their students learn without breaking it up and giving them some sort of a brain stretch or a brain break, as I like to call it. A brain break includes a breathing exercise to get their neurons oxygenized, to get their brain cells oxygenized, a movement exercise to balance the left and the right hemispheres of the brain, the application of music, and some sort of activity where they're talking to each other. So every 20 minutes, give them at least a 5-minute brain break. Encourage them to BYOB or bring their own bottle of water in. Water is the best conductor of electricity for the healthy brain, and in order to process information quickly and effectively, the adult learner's brain needs to be well hydrated. Caffeine, colas, and coffee, teas tend to dehydrate the brain, so I discourage them from bringing in. Strike that whole comment. The best conductor of electricity for the adult brain is water, and if they're drinking water while they're learning new information, they're going to be able to process that information much more effectively. I discourage them from bringing in coffee, teas, or colas because those have dehydrating effects on the brain. So just all this information about how your brain learns is very empowering to adult learners. Once they understand how their brain makes those connections, they are so invested into the learning process, and that's part of what we wanted the BC3 to be all about. So come on in and check us out. We're hopefully going to be up and running this fall of 2009, and the classroom is H230. Thank you. H232?
The classroom is H200. You just restate
and the classroom is H200. Come and join us.
Another question I have, just a quick question, is how are we, when it comes to like testing, if you can kind of briefly mention something about the testing environment, how we test now, because for example, the nursing programs and other programs, they have these very long 3-4 hour exams. Is there any kind of advice you can give, maybe either to the instructor or to students when they're taking these tremendously long exams?
Yes.
Can you briefly say something about
Absolutely. Part of the whole atmosphere of BC3, as I mentioned before, is empowering the adult learner by teaching them their unique learning style and how to get into that resourceful state for learning. So for example, testing is a very anxiety-provoking time for many nursing students. Once they understand that breathing can help them to initiate the parasympathetic nervous response, which is the relaxation response, or if they're a highly kinesthetic person, by moving their body or doing some sort of an exercise while they're sitting in the chair, they're going to have a much greater opportunity to be successful on the test because they're going to be in charge of their own anxiety levels. So that helps to keep their anxiety down, and then also teaching them visualization techniques. For example, if they were trying to learn the concepts on the neurovascular system and they used a graphic organizer such as this, they would be able to then visualize the information mentally as they're thinking about how to answer the responses. So that's the power of the graphic organizer, and it can carry over into the test-taking situation as well.
it seems to me like, just briefly to say this, you almost should organize your test taking people in the type of learning styles they are. Like all the people who tap their toes because they learned kinesthetically and they need to do that because it irritates some people.
Absolutely.
Like some learners irritate other people. It seems like we should, not that we should mix them all together. I know it's great to mix together, but maybe would you ever do something like that? Would you ever break up the different learning styles? I know you're trying to aggregate and bring everything together, but is there a time when you kind of say, okay, you people who are kinesthetic learners get together and talk about kinesthetic strategies, and you people who are these type of learners? I mean, is there something like that that you
Absolutely. That's the beauty of the BC3, because students will be able to break apart into different groups using the modular furniture and have their own small consensus groups. So we could do an activity where the kinesthetic learners come up with ideas on a concept, the auditory learners come up with other ideas, and the visual learners come up with yet another set of ideas. As far as putting them into separate rooms for test taking, that is a possibility. I hadn't really thought of that, but what I'd ideally like to do is to get the student to recognize what their learning style is and then to improve that learning style so that they're much more flexible learners. So if they were high visual, I try to get them to do strategies which are going to increase their auditory learning and their kinesthetic learning as well. If they're highly left-brained, I try to give them activities that will help them to become a much more middle-of-the-brain learner. So for example, left-brain learners tend to be very detail-oriented and analytical. They have to have the one exact response. They're not a flexible thinker at all. So by putting them together into a group with some right-brain learners, they tend to learn to be a little bit more flexible. By using graphic organizers, they're increasing their right brain skills of spatial visualization and spontaneity and imagination. The same goes for the learning styles. If a person has two major learning styles, for example, linguistic and logical mathematical, those are two awesome learning intelligences to have as a nurse. But unfortunately, many of the profiles I've used with nursing students, these two are the areas that they're very low in. And so I get them to recognize, if you are going to be an awesome nurse, you need to really work on your logical thinking. You need to work on your math skills. And once they understand that and they see the power of their other learning intelligences, they really buy into it. So I give them different activities that can help increase their mathematical and linguistic skills as well. And again, put them together with groups of students who can strengthen each other.
Great. Okay. Let's just see how that went and see how it looks. All we did is just do that. And then, hold on a second. Let's